Everybody cares about safety in Canada. I care about safety, you care about safety. So how safe do you feel right now? Do you feel safe knowing that I carry a hunting knife on me? It would make a lot of people feel uncomfortable. Now, what about if you knew that somebody was carrying a firearm? Now, lots of people would have a major problem with this. And don't be alarmed, this is only a BB gun. This is not a real firearm. But what I'm going to show you next is even more dangerous than this firearm, if this was a firearm, and that is this cell phone. Now, the reason why I say that this cell phone is more dangerous is because 3,000 people alone die every year in Canada due to texting and driving. Now, when you compare that to firearms, there's roughly 1,115 deaths by firearm done in Canada. That still is a lot, and firearms are a very deadly weapon. But of that 1,115, 75% are self-inflicted. So what does that leave you with? That leaves us with 20%. 20% that are actually homicide. 223 a year. Now, of course, there's 2% that goes to accidental, and then there's 1% that is intervention, which is the police as well. But 223 compared to 3,000, what is more deadly and what is more in the interest of the public safety? So I'm going to ask you to think about this for a second. Because if we compare ourselves to other countries, there's countries like Japan who has very, very strict gun laws and very low gun crime, which is exactly what they want. And it works. But then you have countries like Mexico where the strict gun laws accept extremely high crime. Extremely high. And on the opposite spectrum, you have countries like Switzerland where there is a very, very high volume of guns per household, practically one gun in every household, due to the fact that they have a mandatory military enrollment. And they also have very low crime due to gun violence. Meanwhile, on the opposite, you have the US, which has 1.2 guns per person, and they have 33,000 deaths by gun every year. So some work, some don't work. It goes to show that not one way is the correct way. Both will work, both will fail. So who are the shooters? Who are the people behind the trigger that are pulling the gun? A lot of times you hear people on the news say that it's always mental health related. Now, is it really mental health related? Is every shooter who's white pulls a trigger, is he mentally destabilized, meanwhile other shooters are doing it for religious reasons? Now, this is something that you have to think about. Because I think that society has a major factor on why there's a big violent problem within North America with guns. From a young age, children are growing up and they're playing shooting games. Games where they almost idolize that military, that violent nature. So it's something that you have to think about because there's always a motive behind every gunshot. Now, when it comes to regulation, we can regulate guns. Regulation is good. I think that there's a lot of gun owners who think regulation is good. But when you have an incident that's committed by a criminal, and that criminal who never ever owned his gun in the first place legally, never went through the correct licensing, never did the proper tests and followed the rules in owning that gun, and now you want to enforce more regulation on the law-abiding citizens. How does this make sense? The fair people who are obeying the law are now being punished in a way because the people who don't follow the law in the first place, and this new regulation, they won't be following it either. So you have to think about this for a second, because when these crimes are committed, a crime is going against the law. And when criminals break the law, how does laying down more regulation prevent them from doing that again? So I just want to close and talk to you about, there's a responsibility I have as a family man, as a husband, as a father to my children, where I want to protect them and I want to do everything I can for them to make sure that they are protected. And I think that applies to every father, every mother, everyone who is responsible for someone in their family. So if you ask me, do I want to be helpless and defenseless, and do you want to take guns away from me? Well, you know what? I would rather be able to defend myself than to sit there and be helpless because we know that criminals do not follow these laws. Thank you for the time.